Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Horizon, watching the massive alien ship grow larger on the view screen. His heart beat faster than usual, but he kept his face calm. This was humanity's first real meeting with another spacefaring civilization, and he was in charge of making it go well. "How are you feeling, Commander?" Lieutenant Amy Parker asked from her station nearby. She had been with him for 3 years, and she could always tell when he was nervous. "Like I'm about to meet royalty," Jake said with a small smile. "Because I am." The Valtherian Empire controlled 7 star systems and had been traveling through space for thousands of years. Humanity had only managed faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. They were the newcomers, the children in a universe full of ancient civilizations. The Valtherians had agreed to this meeting, which was more than many other alien races had offered. "Their ship is beautiful," Amy said, looking at the sleek silver vessel that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. It was 3 times the size of the Horizon and looked more like a work of art than a military craft. "All crew members prepare for docking," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. "Remember your training. Be respectful. Watch your words. And for heaven's sake, don't touch anything unless they say it's okay." The docking process took 20 minutes. When it was complete, Jake gathered his team. Besides Amy, he had brought Dr. Chris Bennett, their medical officer and xenobiologist and specialist Karen White, who spoke 6 Earth languages and had been studying the Valtherian language for months. "Ready?" Jake asked them. They all nodded. Chris adjusted his uniform one more time. Karen checked her translation device. Amy gave Jake a confident smile. The airlock door opened with a soft hiss. The air that flowed in was cooler than what humans preferred, and it smelled faintly of something like mint and copper. Jake stepped through first as protocol demanded. The Valtherian corridor was huge. The ceiling was at least 12 feet high, and the walls glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from within the metal itself. Everything was smooth and curved, with no sharp corners anywhere. 2 Valtherian guards stood waiting for them. They were tall, nearly 7 feet each, with skin that looked like polished silver. Their faces were similar to humans in some ways, with 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. But their eyes were much larger and completely violet in color. Markings on their skin glowed faintly with blue light. "Welcome, humans," one of them said in English that was nearly perfect. "Follow us to the council chamber. Princess Zarathiel is waiting." They walked through corridors that curved and twisted in ways that made Jake feel slightly dizzy. Other Valtherians passed them, all tall and silver-skinned, all watching the humans with curious violet eyes. Some of them whispered to each other in their own language, which sounded like musical chimes. "They're staring at us," Karen whispered. "We're probably the first humans they've ever seen in person." Chris replied quietly. "I'd stare too." The council chamber was enormous. The ceiling disappeared into darkness far above them. The walls were covered in what looked like living plants that glowed with different colors. In the center of the room, on a raised platform, sat several Valtherians in elaborate robes. But Jake's attention was immediately drawn to the figure standing in front of them all. She was taller than the guards, nearly 7.5 feet, and her presence filled the room. Her skin was the same silver color, but her markings glowed brighter, shifting between blue and purple. She wore a flowing robe that seemed to move on its own, and on her head was a crown that looked like it was made of frozen starlight. Princess Zarathiel of the Valtherian Empire watched the humans approach with eyes that missed nothing. Jake stopped at the appropriate distance and bowed, as they had practiced. His team did the same, Your Highness, Jake said, his voice steady. "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the United Earth Space Command. We are honored that you agreed to meet with us." The princess studied him for a long moment. Then she descended from the platform, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for someone so tall. She came to stand directly in front of Jake, and he had to tilt his head back to meet her eyes. "Commander Morrison," she said, and her voice was like music, deep and melodic. "Your people are very small." Jake wasn't sure if that was an insult or just an observation. "We make up for it with determination, Your Highness." Something flickered in her eyes. It might have been amusement. "I have been told that humans are direct in their speech. I see this is true." One of the advisors on the platform made a sharp noise. The princess held up one hand and the advisor fell silent. "Among my people, only certain individuals may speak directly to royalty," she explained, looking down at Jake. "Lesser beings must speak through intermediaries. But I sense you do not know our customs well." I will allow this breach of protocol. For now. Thank you, Your Highness, Jake said. We have much to learn about your people. We hope this meeting is the first step toward friendship between our civilizations. Friendship? The princess repeated the word slowly, as if tasting it. An interesting concept. Tell me, Commander, what does Earth offer the Valtharian Empire? We have resources from 7 star systems. We have technology your people cannot even imagine. What can humans give us that we do not already have? Jake had prepared for this question. Every diplomat had warned him it would come up. The Valtharians were ancient and powerful. Humanity was new and weak in comparison. But he had an answer. Perspective, Your Highness, he said. You've been traveling the stars for thousands of years. You've seen everything, done everything, built everything. But we humans are new to all of this. We see the universe with fresh eyes. We ask questions that you might not think to ask anymore. We solve problems in ways that might seem strange to you, but they work. And sometimes the newest member of the family has the most interesting things to say. The princess's markings shifted to a brighter purple. The advisors on the platform began whispering urgently to each other. You speak boldly, Commander, the princess said. You compare our civilizations to family. This is presumptuous, Jake felt his stomach drop. Had he already ruined everything? But then the princess did something unexpected. She smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it was genuine. I like it, she said. You amuse me, human, very well. We will begin formal negotiations. But first I wish to learn more about your customs. It is traditional among your people to shake hands, yes? She extended her hand toward him. It was larger than his, with long fingers that ended in what looked like metallic nails. Jake reached out and took her hand carefully. Her skin was cool and smooth. Not cold exactly, but several degrees lower than human temperature. Her grip was firm but controlled. Like this, Your Highness, he said, up and down just a couple of times. It's a sign of respect and goodwill. They shook hands, and Jake noticed that her markings flared brighter for just a moment. Behind her, the advisors looked shocked. One of them stood up from his seat, his markings flashing red. Princess, this is highly irregular, the advisor said in English, clearly wanting Jake to understand his disapproval. Physical contact with an alien species without proper ceremony or… Lord Catherine, the princess said, not looking away from Jake. I am aware of protocol. I am also aware that we are meeting a new species. Flexibility is required. She released Jake's hand and stepped back. You and your crew will be given quarters aboard our ship. We have much to discuss, Commander Morrison. I find myself curious about humans and their fresh perspective on the universe. Jake bowed again. Thank you, Your Highness. We look forward to learning about your people as well. As the guards led them away to their assigned quarters, Amy leaned close to Jake and whispered, Did you see how bright her markings got when you shook her hand? I noticed, Jake said quietly. According to my research, Karen added, keeping her voice low, changes in marking color indicate emotional states. I think you surprised her. In a good way, Chris chuckled softly. Well, that's a start. At least she didn't throw us out immediately. Their quarters were larger than expected, with 4 separate rooms connected to a common area. Everything was sized for Valtharians, which meant the beds were too long and the chairs were too tall. But it was comfortable enough. That night, as Jake lay in bed trying to sleep, he thought about the princess. She was intimidating, certainly, with her height and her presence and those piercing violet eyes. But there had been something else there, too. Intelligence, curiosity, and maybe, just maybe, a sense of humor hidden beneath all that royal dignity. This assignment was going to be interesting. The first week aboard the Valtharian flagship passed slowly. Jake and his team spent long hours in conference rooms, discussing trade agreements and resource sharing. The negotiations were tedious, with every word being analyzed and translated multiple times to avoid misunderstandings. But the evenings were different. Princess Zarathiel had requested private lessons about human culture, and Jake had volunteered to teach her. Lord Catherine had objected strongly, saying it was beneath the princess to spend time alone with an alien, but she had overruled him. If we are to work with humans, I must understand them, she had said. Commander Morrison will be my teacher. So every evening after the formal negotiations ended, Jake would meet the princess in the observation deck. It was a huge room with transparent walls that showed the stars in every direction. The first time Jake entered, he had stopped and stared for a full minute. It felt like floating in space itself. "You like the view," the princess said. It wasn't a question. "It's incredible," Jake admitted. "We have observation decks on our ships, but nothing like this." She moved to stand beside him, and he was reminded again of how tall she was. The top of his head barely reached her shoulder. "The stars are the same for both our peoples," she said softly. "This is something I find comforting." They stood together in silence for a while, watching a distant nebula glow purple and green against the darkness. "Tell me about Earth," the princess finally said. "What is your world like?" Jake pulled out his datapad and showed her images. Oceans that stretched to the horizon. Forests with trees that grew 100 feet tall. Cities with millions of people. Mountains covered in snow. Deserts that glowed gold under the sun. The princess watched each image carefully, her markings shifting through different shades of blue and purple. "Your world has much water," she observed. "About 70% of the surface," Jake confirmed. "Do Valtharians not have much water on your homeworld?" "We have water, but it is mostly frozen. Our world is colder than yours. We are adapted to lower temperatures." She looked at him curiously. "Is this why you are always warm?" Jake hadn't realized she had noticed. "I guess so. Your ship is comfortable for you, but it's a bit cold for humans. I've been wearing an extra layer under my uniform." "I did not know," the princess said, and her markings dimmed slightly. "I will have the temperature adjusted in your quarters." "You don't have to." "I do," she interrupted. "You are guests. You should be comfortable." Over the next few evenings, Jake taught her about human history, culture, and customs. He explained families and how humans raised their children together. He described friendships and how people chose to spend time with others they enjoyed. He talked about music, art, sports, and 100 other things. The princess listened to everything with intense focus. She asked questions that were sometimes surprising in their depth. "You say humans can choose their own paths in life. But someone must guide your society. How do you maintain order if everyone does as they wish?" "We have laws and governments," Jake explained. "But within those structures, people have freedom to choose their careers, their homes, their partners. It's not perfect, but most humans value that freedom above almost everything else." "Partners," the princess repeated. "You mean mates? Tell me how humans choose mates." Jake felt his face grow warm. This was not a topic he had expected to discuss. Well, usually people meet and spend time together. If they enjoy each other's company and feel a connection, they might decide to become a couple. Some people date for years before making a permanent commitment. Others know quickly. And your families do not arrange these partnerships? Not anymore. That used to happen in some cultures, but now most humans choose for themselves. The princess was quiet for a long time. "This is very different from Valtharian customs," she finally said. "Our matches are arranged by families for political advantage or genetic benefit. The individuals involved rarely meet before the bonding ceremony." "That sounds lonely," Jake said without thinking. Then he quickly added, "I'm sorry, Your Highness. I didn't mean to insult your customs." "You did not," she said. Her markings had turned a deep purple that Jake had learned meant sadness or contemplation. "You are simply honest. I find this quality rare and valuable." On the 10th evening, Jake brought something special with him. It was a small container that he had kept in his personal belongings. "I have something for you, Your Highness," he said. "A gift from Earth." He opened the container carefully. Inside was a preserved flower, red and perfect, frozen in clear material that kept it exactly as it had been the day it was picked. "This is called a rose," Jake explained. "On Earth, we consider them beautiful. I thought you might like to have one." The princess took the container with both hands, holding it up to examine the flower from every angle. Her markings blazed bright blue, brighter than Jake had ever seen them. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "The color, the shape, the delicate petals. We have nothing like this on my world." She looked at him, and there was something soft in her violet eyes. "Thank you, Commander. This gift means much to me," Jake smiled. "I'm glad you like it. On Earth, when someone gives a rose to another person, it usually means they admire them or care about them. I wanted you to know that I've enjoyed our time together these past weeks." He didn't see the way her markings flashed white for just a second. He didn't notice Lord Kethrin watching from the doorway, his expression horrified. The next morning, Jake was summoned to an emergency meeting with the Valtharian Council. He arrived to find all the senior advisors present, including Lord Kethrin, who looked at Jake with barely concealed anger. "Commander Morrison," Lord Kethrin said formally, We must discuss your behavior toward Princess Zarathiel. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Have I done something wrong? You gave her a gift, another advisor said. A personal gift, presented in private. Yes, a flower from Earth. I thought it would help her understand human culture better. The advisors looked at each other. Lord Kethrin stepped forward. In Valtherian culture, giving a personal gift to a member of the royal family, especially in private, is a declaration of romantic intent. You have essentially announced your desire to court the princess. Jake felt all the blood drain from his face. What? No, I was just being friendly. In human culture, giving gifts is normal. Friends give each other gifts all the time. We are not humans, Lord Kethrin said coldly. And the princess accepting your gift means she acknowledges your courtship offer. This is completely unacceptable. You are an alien, a member of a primitive species. You cannot court our princess. I wasn't trying to court anyone, Jake protested. This is a misunderstanding. Let me talk to the princess and explain. You will not speak to her, Lord Kethrin declared. This matter must be resolved through proper diplomatic channels. The princess will be informed that you did not understand our customs and that the gift is being returned. Jake spent the rest of the day in his quarters, feeling terrible. Amy, Chris, and Karen tried to cheer him up, but nothing helped. How was I supposed to know? Jake asked, sitting with his head in his hands. We studied their language and basic protocol, but nobody mentioned anything about gifts being marriage proposals. The cultural database did mention it, Karen said quietly, looking at her datapad. But it was in a footnote in Section 17, subsection 4. I'm sorry, Commander. I should have caught that. This isn't your fault, Jake told her. I should have asked before giving her anything. That evening, there was a knock on his door. Jake opened it to find Princess Zarathiel standing there, still holding the container with the rose. Her guards flanked her, looking uncomfortable. Your Highness, Jake said, straightening quickly. I'm so sorry about the confusion. I didn't mean to walk with me, she interrupted. We need to talk. They went to the observation deck, the guards staying at the entrance to give them privacy. The princess stood looking at the stars for a long time before speaking. Lord Kethrin wants me to return your gift and forbid further private meetings between us, she said quietly. I understand, Jake replied. I didn't know about your customs. I never meant to suggest anything romantic. I just thought you would appreciate something from Earth. I know, the princess said. I have spent enough time with you to understand your intentions were innocent. She turned to look at him, her markings glowing soft purple. But I'm not returning the gift. Jake looked up at her in surprise. You're not? No, she said firmly. In Valtherian culture, returning a courtship gift is a grave insult. It says the giver is unworthy. You are not unworthy, Commander. You are simply from a different world with different customs. But if you keep it, doesn't that mean it means I'm acknowledging the gift was given in good faith? Even if its meaning was misunderstood, she said. My advisors will not like this, but I do not care. You have been kind to me. You have taught me about your world and treated me not as a title, but as a person. This is rare in my life. She held up the container with the rose, watching the light reflect through the preservation material. I will keep this, Commander Morrison, and I wish to continue our lessons about human culture if you are willing. Won't that cause problems with your advisors? Jake asked, a smile played at the corner of her mouth. I am a princess of the Valtherian Empire. 3 weeks had passed since the Rose incident, and the relationship between the human delegation and the Valtherian court had grown more comfortable. Jake and Princess Zarathiel continued their evening lessons, and she had begun opening up about her life and her world in ways that surprised even her own people. The trade agreements were nearly complete. To celebrate the upcoming alliance, both sides agreed to hold a formal dinner where humans and Valtherians would eat together for the first time. This is a big deal, Amy told Jake as they prepared in their quarters. Food sharing is important in every culture, but the briefing notes say it's especially significant to Valtherians. Everything seems significant to Valtherians, Chris muttered, adjusting his formal uniform. I sneezed yesterday and 3 guards reached for their weapons. Karen was reviewing her translation device one more time. The dinner will be in the Grand Hall. There will be about 50 Valtherians and the 4 of us. Try not to do anything that could be misinterpreted. Jake nodded, though he felt nervous. The Rose incident still bothered him. He had been trying so hard to be respectful, but he kept stumbling over cultural rules he didn't know existed. The Grand Hall was magnificent. The ceiling was decorated with lights that looked like stars, and the long table was covered with dishes that held both Valtherian and human food. The Valtherians had gone to great effort to prepare meals that humans could eat, using the nutritional information the crew had provided. Princess Zarathiel sat at the head of the table, wearing a robe of deep blue that made her markings stand out like lightning. She smiled when she saw Jake enter, a gesture she had learned from him and now used often. "Commander Morrison," she called out, "please sit here beside me." Lord Kethrin, who was seated on her other side, looked displeased but said nothing. The meal began with various dishes being passed around. Jake tried several Valtherian foods and found most of them edible, though some had flavors he couldn't identify. The Valtherians seemed equally curious about human food, especially the bread and cheese that Chris had insisted on bringing. "This is soft and pleasant," the princess said, tasting a piece of bread with butter. "Your people make this from grain?" "Yes, Your Highness. Wheat is one of our staple crops. We make hundreds of different kinds of bread." The princess looked thoughtful. "On my world, we have little that grows. Most of our food is synthesized or imported. I think I would enjoy visiting Earth to taste more of your natural foods." "You would be welcome any time," Jake said warmly. "I would be honored to show you my homeworld." Several Valtherians looked up sharply at that statement. Jake noticed but didn't understand why they seemed surprised. As the meal continued, the atmosphere became more relaxed. Valtherians and humans began talking across the table, asking questions about each other's worlds and customs. Jake felt proud of how well everything was going. When the main course was finished, Jake stood up. Amy looked at him questioningly, but he had planned this moment carefully. He picked up his glass, which contained a human beverage that the Valtherians had synthesized for the occasion. "Your Highness, honored members of the Valtherian court," Jake began. Everyone fell silent, turning to look at him. "I would like to propose a toast, if I may." The princess nodded graciously. "Please, Commander," Jake raised his glass. "Over the past month, we have learned much about each other. We have overcome misunderstandings, bridged differences, and built the foundation of what I hope will be a lasting friendship between our peoples. Princess Zarathiel, you have been patient with us, teaching us your customs and tolerating our mistakes. You have shown wisdom, kindness, and grace." The princess's markings glowed brighter, shifting to a warm purple. Jake continued, not noticing the way several Valtherians had gone very still. "I hope that the alliance we are forming will last forever. I hope that our peoples will stand together, face challenges together, and grow together. And personally, Your Highness, I would be honored to stand by your side as we move forward into this new era of cooperation." He raised his glass higher, to Princess Zarathiel, to the Valtherian Empire, and to the future we will build together. The silence that followed was absolute. Jake stood with his glass raised, waiting for others to join the toast. But nobody moved. Every Valtherian in the room was staring at him with expressions ranging from shock to horror. Even the servants standing along the walls had frozen in place. Princess Zarathiel's markings had turned white, so bright they almost hurt to look at. She stood slowly, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "Commander Morrison," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Are you actually proposing to me?" Jake felt his brain stutter to a halt. "Proposing what? A continued partnership between our peoples?" Amy was frantically checking her datapad. Her face went pale as snow. "Commander," she said urgently, "I think you just asked the princess to marry you. According to Valtherian customs." The glass slipped from Jake's hand and shattered on the floor. "What? No!" "I was talking about our civilizations working together. I was making a diplomatic toast." Lord Kethrin stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "This is outrageous. Unacceptable. You dare to mock our princess with your words?" "I'm not mocking anyone," Jake protested. "I genuinely had no idea." "The words you spoke," another advisor said, standing as well, "are nearly identical to the traditional Valtherian proposal ceremony. You spoke of forever, of standing by her side, of facing the future together. These are the exact phrases used when one asks for a bonding." Jake felt like the floor was falling away beneath him. He looked at the princess, who was still standing, still staring at him with those wide violet eyes. Her markings were flickering between white and blue, colors he had never seen her display before. "Your Highness," he said desperately, "I swear on everything I hold sacred I was not trying to propose marriage. I don't even know if humans and Valtherians can—" He stopped, realizing he was making things worse. I apologize. I spoke without thinking. I meant no disrespect. The princess slowly sat back down. Her markings were still white, but they had dimmed slightly. Sit, Commander, she said quietly. Everyone sit. The room remained tense as people returned to their seats. Jake sat down, feeling like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Explain to me, the princess said, looking at Jake, what you intended with your words. Jake took a deep breath. In human culture, toasts are common at formal dinners. They're short speeches where we express hopes and good wishes. I wanted to honor you and express my hope that our peoples would remain allies. The part about standing by your side, I meant that metaphorically. As allies. As partners in this agreement between our civilizations. Not as mates, the princess said flatly. No, Your Highness. Not as mates. She was quiet for a long moment, studying him. You truly did not know what those words would mean to my people. I didn't. I'm sorry. I seem to keep making these mistakes. Lord Catherine stood again. Princess, this human has now twice made advances toward you. First with the gift and now with this proposal. Whether through ignorance or intent, the result is the same. He has insulted your honor and the dignity of the royal house. We should end these negotiations and send the humans away. No, the princess said firmly. We will not end the negotiations. But Princess, Lord Catherine, I understand your concern. But I have spent considerable time with Commander Morrison. I know his character. He is honest, sometimes to a fault. His words were poorly chosen, but his intentions were good. She looked at Jake again. However, we cannot simply ignore what has happened. In Valtherian culture, a proposal spoken before witnesses is a serious matter. What do you want me to do? Jake asked. How can I fix this? That is the question, the princess said. She stood again, and this time everyone remained seated. By our customs, when a proposal is made, the recipient must give an answer. To ignore it is to create uncertainty and dishonor both parties. Jake felt his mouth go dry. Are you saying you have to answer my accidental proposal? Yes, she said simply. And I must do so now before these witnesses. The room was so quiet Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Amy reached over and squeezed his hand under the table, trying to offer comfort. The princess looked down at Jake, her expression unreadable. Commander Jake Morrison, you have asked to stand by my side, to face the future together, to bind your path to mine forever. You say these words were not meant as they were understood, but I must respond to them as they were spoken, not as they were intended. She paused, and Jake noticed her markings had shifted to that deep purple color he associated with sadness. My answer, she said slowly, is this. I cannot accept a proposal that was not truly offered. To do so would be dishonest to us both. However, I also cannot reject what may have been an honest expression of respect and friendship. Poorly translated though it was, Lord Catherine made a noise of protest, but she held up a hand to silence him. Therefore, I propose a different solution. Among humans, as Commander Morrison has taught me, there is a custom called courtship, a period of time where two people learn if they are suited for one another, before making a permanent bond. I suggest we employ this human custom to resolve our current situation. Jake's eyes went wide. Your Highness, are you saying? I am saying that we will spend time together. The announcement of the courtship sent ripples through both the human and Valtherian communities. On Earth, the news was met with everything from excitement to disbelief. The media called Jake a hero, a fool, and everything in between. His superiors were cautiously supportive, seeing it as an opportunity to strengthen the alliance, though they sent him daily messages reminding him to be careful. Among the Valtherians, the reaction was more complicated. The traditionalists were outraged. The progressive faction saw it as a historic opportunity, and Princess Zarathiel ignored all the politics and simply began the courtship as she had promised. The first official courtship date was awkward. Jake and the princess met in one of the ship's gardens, a place filled with plants from various Valtherian worlds. Everything was blue or silver or purple, and the air smelled like frozen mint. This is strange, the princess admitted as they walked along a path between glowing trees. I have never done anything like this before. Neither have I, Jake said. Well, I've been on dates, but never with royalty. Or with someone from another species. Does my appearance disturb you? She asked suddenly. You are so small and warm. I am large and cold. We are very different. Jake stopped walking and looked up at her. Your Highness, you're beautiful. Different from humans, yes, but beautiful. Your markings are like living art. Your eyes see things mine can't, and you're one of the smartest people I've ever met. Her markings flushed a warm blue. You think I am beautiful? I do, Jake said honestly. Does my appearance disturb you? She tilted her head, studying him. You are small, yes, and very warm. Your skin is soft where mine is firm. Your eyes are brown like the wood from your earth trees. You are different from anyone I have ever known. But disturbing? No, I find you pleasant to look at. They continued walking, and the conversation became easier. They talked about their childhoods, so different yet with some surprising similarities. Both had felt the weight of duty from a young age. Both had lost people they cared about to war. Both sometimes felt lonely despite being surrounded by others. Over the following weeks, the courtship continued. They shared meals together, watched entertainment from both cultures, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. Jake introduced her to human music, and she was fascinated by how it could convey emotion without words. She showed him Valtherian poetry, which was mathematical and beautiful in ways he had never imagined. One evening, they were in the observation deck watching a solar storm on a nearby star. The colors were incredible, waves of red and orange cascading across the star's surface. Tell me something, Commander, the princess said quietly. If you had known what your words would mean that night at the dinner, would you have spoken them anyway? Jake was quiet for a long time. A month ago, I would have said no. I would have been too afraid of making a mistake. But now, I honestly don't know. This courtship has been unexpected, but it's also been good. I've enjoyed getting to know you better. As have I, she said. You are not like anyone in my world, Jake. You speak your mind. You ask questions. You treat me as a person, not as a title or a political tool. It was the first time she had used his first name without his rank. He noticed. Is that rare for you? He asked. Being treated like a person? Very rare, she admitted. I am the third princess of the Valtherian Empire. My entire life has been planned by others. Who I speak to, where I go, what I say. Everything is decided by advisors and protocol. Until you came along and gave me a flower without knowing it meant anything. It was the first time someone had given me something simply because they thought I would like it. She turned to look at him, her markings glowing soft purple in the starlight. These weeks with you have been the first time in my life where I have felt free to simply be myself. Jake felt something shift in his chest. Zarathiel, he said, using her name for the first time. May I ask you something personal? Yes. When I accidentally proposed to you, you could have just rejected it outright. Lord Catherine wanted you to. But you created this courtship solution instead. Why? She looked back at the solar storm. Because a part of me wanted to say yes. Jake's breath caught. What? When you spoke those words, even knowing they were a mistake, something in me responded to them. You spoke of standing together, of facing the future as partners. No one has ever offered me that before. In Valtherian arrangements, the male is always dominant. But you spoke of standing by my side. Not behind me or in front of me. As equals, she met his eyes. I knew you did not mean it romantically, but I realized I wished you had. So I created this courtship to give us both time to discover if what I felt was real or simply loneliness disguised as attraction. And, Jake asked, his heart beating faster, what have you discovered? That I was not mistaken, she said softly. Jake Morrison, I find myself caring for you. Not as a political ally. Not as a friend, though you are that as well, but as someone I could imagine spending my life with. Jake stood there, looking up at this tall alien princess, and realized something that shocked him. I feel the same way, he said quietly. I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was watching you laugh at human comedy for the first time. Maybe it was seeing how gentle you are with small things even though you're so strong. Maybe it was just spending time with someone who sees the universe the way you do. But somewhere along the way, this stopped being just a diplomatic solution and became real. She reached down and took his hand, her cool fingers wrapping around his warm ones. What do we do now? I don't know, Jake admitted. This is complicated. Our peoples are different. The politics alone are a nightmare. And I'm sure there are 1,000 reasons why this is a terrible idea. There are, she agreed. Lord Catherine reminds me of them daily. The genetic incompatibility, the cultural differences, the scandal it would cause. But Jake, I have spent my entire life doing what was expected of me. For once, I want to do what I choose. Even if that choice is me? Jake asked. Especially if that choice is you, she said, and smiled. They stood together in the observation deck, hands joined, watching the solar storm paint the darkness with fire. Neither of them noticed Amy standing in the doorway, watching with a pleased expression before quietly slipping away. The next day, Jake requested a meeting with Lord Kethrin. It did not go well. "You should never have been allowed near the princess," the advisor said coldly. "Now you have confused her with your human notions of romantic love. She has duties, responsibilities. She cannot throw those away for an alien." "I'm not asking her to throw anything away," Jake said, trying to stay calm. "I'm just trying to understand what happens next. If the princess and I want to continue this relationship, what would that mean politically?" "It would mean scandal," Lord Kethrin said bluntly. "The traditionalist faction would revolt. Other noble houses would see it as an insult. And practically speaking, you are incompatible. You cannot produce heirs together. You cannot even live comfortably in the same environment for long periods. She needs cold, you need warmth. She will live for 300 years, you will barely reach 100. This is doomed from the start." Everything the advisor said was true, and Jake knew it. But it didn't change how he felt. "What if we found solutions to those problems?" Jake asked. "Medical technology advances every year. Environmental controls can manage temperature. And as for time, would it be better to have 50 years of happiness or 300 years of duty without joy?" "You speak like a romantic fool," Lord Kethrin said. "Love does not conquer all, Commander. This is reality." Jake left the meeting feeling discouraged but not defeated. He went to find the princess and told her about the conversation. "Kethrin is not wrong about the challenges," she said. "But he is wrong about one thing. Love may not conquer all, but it is worth fighting for. And I have decided I want to fight for this." "So have I," Jake said. "But we should be realistic. This is going to be hard." "The best things usually are," she replied. They spent the next few weeks not just courting, but planning. They consulted with doctors about biological compatibility. They spoke with engineers about environmental solutions. They researched legal frameworks that might allow for an official bonding between species. During this time, they also faced a test neither had expected. The USS Horizon and the Valtharian flagship were called to mediate a dispute between two smaller civilizations near the border of Valtharian space. Pirates had been raiding merchant vessels, and both civilizations blamed the other. Jake and Princess Zarathiel led the joint mission. They worked side by side, combining human tactical thinking with Valtharian diplomatic experience. When the pirates attacked during the negotiations, they defended the conference together. Jake saw the princess fight for the first time, and she was magnificent. She moved with speed and grace despite her size, her combat training evident in every motion. When a pirate tried to flank Jake, she was there, protecting him without hesitation. Later, after the pirates had been captured and the dispute resolved, they stood on the bridge of the Horizon, catching their breath. "You saved my life," Jake said. "As you would have saved mine," she replied. "We are partners, are we not? Partners protect each other." Jake looked at her, at this tall, strong. The announcement of the engagement created chaos in both human and Valtharian space. Earth's government was thrilled at the diplomatic implications but nervous about the precedent. The Valtharian court was split down the middle, with heated debates raging in every council chamber across their empire. Princess Zarathiel and Jake Morrison ignored most of the noise and focused on planning their future together. They knew they had to address the practical concerns if anyone was going to take their bonding seriously. The first challenge was biological. Dr. Chris Bennett worked with Valtharian medical experts to understand their physiologies. The results were better than expected. "You can't have biological children together," Chris explained to them privately. "But that's not surprising. You're from different worlds with completely different evolutionary paths. However, both your peoples have advanced genetic technology. If you wanted children in the future, they could be created using genetic material from both of you, grown in an artificial environment suited to either species or a combination of both. So we could have a family," Zarathiel said softly, her markings glowing with hope. "You could," Chris confirmed. "It would take planning and technology, but yes, the environmental challenge was harder. Valtharians preferred temperatures around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, while humans were comfortable around 70. After consulting with engineers, they designed a solution. Specially made clothing that would regulate body temperature for both of them, allowing them to live in the same space comfortably. "It's not perfect," Jake admitted as they tested the prototype suits. But it works. We will make it work, Zarathiel said firmly. Love requires compromise. The political situation was the most complex. Lord Kethrin led the traditionalist faction in fierce opposition, arguing that the princess was betraying her heritage. But slowly other voices began to speak up in support. A young Valtherian noble named Lady Sethris gave a speech before the council that changed many minds. For thousands of years we have kept ourselves separate from other species. We have maintained our purity, our traditions, our isolation, and what has it brought us? We are stagnant. Our birth rates decline. Our innovation has slowed. This human and our princess offer us something we desperately need. New ideas, new perspectives, new possibilities. Yes, this bonding is unprecedented. But perhaps that is exactly what we need. On Earth, the response was more positive overall. Humans had always been curious about other species, eager to connect and learn. A poll showed that 70% of humans supported the engagement. Some religious groups objected on principle, but most people were fascinated by the romance of it all. Jake's family was supportive, though his mother worried constantly. "Are you sure about this, honey?" she asked during a video call. "She's so different from you." "That's part of why I love her, Mom," Jake said. "She sees the world in ways I never could. She challenges me, and she makes me want to be better." "Does she make you happy?" "Yes, very happy." "Then that's all that matters," his mother said, smiling through her tears. The wedding was planned for 6 months after the engagement. It would take place on a neutral space station, halfway between Earth and the Valtherian homeworld. The ceremony would incorporate traditions from both cultures, creating something entirely new. During those 6 months, Jake and Zarathiel faced one more serious challenge. A group of extremist Valtherians led by a noble named Duke Vorthan attempted to sabotage the wedding. They believed that allowing this union would corrupt their entire civilization. The plot was discovered when Amy intercepted a coded message discussing plans to attack the space station during the ceremony. Jake immediately wanted to cancel or postpone the wedding, but Zarathiel refused. "If we let fear dictate our choices, we have already lost," she said firmly. "We will have extra security. We will be careful, but we will not hide." Security for the wedding became a massive operation. Human and Valtherian forces worked together to screen every guest, scan every ship that approached the station, and monitor all communications. It was exhausting and stressful, but it also showed how well the two species could work together when they had a common goal. The night before the wedding, Jake couldn't sleep. He stood in his quarters on the space station, looking out at the stars, and wondered if he was making the right choice. It wasn't that he doubted his feelings for Zarathiel, but the weight of what they were doing, the history they were making, felt overwhelming. There was a knock on his door. When he opened it, he found Amy standing there with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "Thought you might need a friend tonight," she said. They sat together, drinking and talking about everything that had happened since that first day aboard the Valtherian flagship. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked. "Getting assigned to this mission?" "Are you kidding?" "This is the adventure of a lifetime," Amy said. "I'm the second in command to the guy who's marrying an alien princess. My grandkids are going to think I'm making this up." Jake laughed. "When you put it that way, it does sound made up." "Jake," Amy said seriously, "I've known you for 5 years. I've never seen you as happy as you've been these past few months. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever challenges you and Zarathiel face in the future, you'll face them together. That's what matters." "Thanks, Amy," Jake said. "For everything. For being here, for supporting this, for not thinking I'm completely crazy." "Oh, you're definitely crazy," Amy said with a grin. "But it's a good kind of crazy." The morning of the wedding arrived with stunning views of a nearby nebula visible from the station. The ceremony hall was enormous, decorated with flowers from Earth and glowing crystals from the Valtherian homeworld. Thousands of guests filled the space, with millions more watching via live broadcast across both civilizations. Jake stood at the altar wearing a specially designed suit that combined human formal wear with Valtherian ceremonial elements. His hands were shaking slightly, but he felt ready. When the music began, everyone turned to watch the bride's entrance. Princess Zarathiel appeared at the far end of the hall, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. She wore a gown that flowed like liquid silver, designed by artists from both worlds working together. Her markings glowed brilliantly through the translucent fabric, pulsing gently with her heartbeat. On her head was a new crown, created specifically for this occasion, combining elements of Valtherian royal design with human wedding traditions. She was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. As she walked down the aisle, Jake noticed she was alone. In Valtherian tradition, a bride was usually escorted by her father or the head of her house. But the emperor, her father, had refused to attend the wedding. It was his final gesture of disapproval. Jake felt a surge of anger at that, but Zarathiel had told him she expected it. He will come around eventually, she had said. Or he will not. Either way, I am making my own choice. When she reached the altar, she looked down at Jake with those magnificent violet eyes, and he saw no doubt there. Only love and determination. The ceremony was conducted by both a human official and a Valtherian elder who had supported their union. It was a blend of traditions, prayers, and promises that created something unique. When it came time for the vows, Jake spoke first, his voice steady and clear. Zarathiel, when I first met you, I was intimidated by your presence. Your intelligence, your strength. I never imagined that someone like you could see anything worthwhile in someone like me. But you taught me that love doesn't require us to be the same. It requires us to appreciate our differences, to learn from each other, to grow together. You have made me braver, wiser, and happier than I ever thought possible. I promise to stand by your side, not ahead of you or behind you, but beside you as your equal and your partner. I promise to love you in whatever form that love needs to take, whether it's easy or difficult. And I promise that every day I will choose you just as I choose you today. Zarathiel's markings flared bright blue. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the hall. Jake Morrison, you came into my life like a storm, disrupting everything I thought I knew about duty, tradition, and my own heart. You gave me a flower without knowing what it meant, and in doing so, you gave me something I had never experienced. A gift given simply because you thought it would make me happy. You spoke words of proposal without meaning to, and in doing so, you showed me what I truly wanted. You are small by my people's standards, but your heart is larger than any I have known. You are not Valtherian, but you have taught me more about honor and courage than anyone of my own kind. I promise to protect you, to support you, to challenge you when you need challenging, and to comfort you when you need comfort. I promise to bridge the gap between our worlds, to be a partner to you and an ambassador for our peoples. And I promise that for whatever time we have, whether it is 50 years or 300, I will love you with everything I am. There was not a dry eye in the hall. Even some of the Valtherian traditionalists looked moved. The official pronounced them bonded, married, united. Jake and Zarathiel kissed, a gesture that required her to bend down considerably and him to stand on his toes, but they made it work with laughter and joy. The celebration that followed was unlike anything either species had seen before.